Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. This is going to be a session on the project Precious Plastic Herzeele as part of the Virtually Maker Fair. We, as many of you may have read in our bio, we are a plastic recycling project based in northern France, and we are aiming to try and reduce the environmental impact of informal refugee camps through the development of a plastic recycling makerspace. So hopefully you'll find this session super interesting, and hopefully you'll learn something new, and maybe it will inspire you to do similar projects in your area, or looking a bit more into precious plastic. So to start, I'll introduce myself. I'm Chloe. I'm the project coordinator, and my background is actually in engineering. I currently work for an NGO called DigiJeune, and they basically develop and create resources and provide training around how we can use engineering principles and digital technologies to help re-engage young people in society and inspire them around the subjects of maths, science, and engineering. So for this project, I'm part of a team of 4, along with Tom, Hannah, and Caroline. And we basically started working on this project as we had all spent several years working and volunteering in the north of France, supporting displaced communities. We actually worked with different organisations, but came together with a shared vision. And I'm going to go a bit more into detail about that later on. So in this presentation, I want to present to you the project, but I also want to discuss about the situation here in northern France, particularly around migration and the impacts on displaced communities, as well as the local residents. By talking about that, I hope to give a bit of context before talking about the project itself, our aims, our objectives, and what our actions are. I will then briefly go through some more information about precious plastic, what it is, how you can find information about it, and then briefly introduce the idea of why it is important to have these projects to show how engineering and making can create social change. Finally, I want to just give the information so that you can see how you can support us and get in contact, and follow our journey in creating this project. So let's start off with talking about where this project is based. We are a workshop located in the small village of Herzeele, which is around the areas of Calais, Dunkirk, and Grandcent. So many of you may not really know much about the situation in northern France, as it has lost a lot of media attention over the past few years. That's why I do think it's important to make sure we touch on it before introducing the project, so you can get an idea of the context. So many may remember this famous image that was shared in 2015 across many newspapers. The image was of a young Syrian boy washed up on a beach in Turkey. This was taken at a time when there was a large number of refugees fleeing their countries and trying to get to the EU. And from the shores of Turkey, Greece, and Italy, people travel through Europe in search of refuge. Calais, Granson, and Dunkirk at the French-English border are for some where they become trapped. For them, the UK is where they believe they will find safety, security, and be reunited with their families. But with no safe or legal routes, and there are only dangerous, with no safe or legal routes, the only way is to take dangerous and life-threatening attempts to cross the Channel. So around the time that this image was taken, there were 2 formal refugee camps set up in northern France. One was located in Calais and one located in Granson. And these were places where people could take refuge and have shelter whilst they were trying to get to the UK. In 2016, the Calais camp was dismantled, and in 2017, the La Linière camp in Granson was burnt down, and neither of these were replaced. So since then, there has continued to be no formal refugee camps for displaced people to take shelter. And due to the political climate, there is very little recognition or support for these communities. Regardless, the situation continues where people fleeing from their home countries because of danger, war, corruption, and many, many other reasons, they become trapped at this border. People tend to stay in this situation for 6 to 8 to 14, maybe more months. And for this time, they tend to only have tents, blankets, or tarp provided as shelter by humanitarian organisations. Many congregate in woodlands or abandoned warehouses, and these are what we call informal camps. There are no toilets, limited access to clean water, and at the moment there is only one skip being provided for waste, which is meant to be accessible for everyone in a space of 48 hectares. So to give an idea of numbers, before the confinement rules were put in place by the government at the beginning of March, because of COVID-19, it was estimated that around 1,500 to 2,000 displaced people were sleeping rough around the areas of Calais and Dunkirk. Within these communities, there are men, women, unaccompanied minors as young as 14 and 15 years old, and also families with children as young as 1 year old. On top of this winter, there was no access to emergency shelter provided, and this meant that organisations working on the ground reported on seeing the largest number of families and children sleeping rough outside since the refugee crisis in 2015. In these spaces, instability and fear is also created, with evictions being undertaken by the French riot police on a weekly, fortnightly, or even daily basis. This is where they move people on and force them to leave their belongings behind. The process has no respect for the people and no respect for the environment, with no waste collection operations after these events taking place. Which means, as you can see by the pictures, that waste is left behind and quickly builds up. This includes tents, damaged clothes, food, and personal possessions left to deteriorate, damage the environment, and increase the risk of injury or disease for any of those who return. The situation in northern France, obviously, in itself is a huge topic and could be spoken about for ages. I'm going to stop there. in terms of my description of the situation, as hopefully that's enough to give context for this project. But if you would like to find out more about the situation or support any of the organisations working on the ground here are just a few of them. You can find them all on Facebook, and they do regular updates and provide information about how you can donate and support. Okay, but I'm going to move on and talk a bit about how Hannah, Tom, Caro, and myself actually came together. So we were each long-term volunteers. We were working on the ground with different organisations, and we were constantly witnessing masses of waste being generated and basically not being moved. And it was clearly happening in a never-ending cycle, where people would seek shelter in an unoccupied space, such as a warehouse or an opening in the forest. And then organisations would obviously come and distribute essential aid or food. And many of these items use single-use plastic, such as food trays, plastic bottles, and toothbrushes. But because the only bin that is available is a large skip, which is a large walking distance away and also involves crossing a very busy dual carriageway, means that a lot of waste wouldn't be thrown away properly. Then an eviction would happen and the space would be cleared of people, but there would be no or minimal cleanup operation afterwards, which would leave behind piles of personal possessions and rubbish just left to deteriorate. Again, though, without people being there, it would mean that it would be an empty space that people can seek refuge. And so the cycle continues, with the spaces becoming increasingly dangerous and unsanitary. And not only for the displaced people and the communities that live in these spaces, but also for the communities that live alongside it, such as the residents of Calais, Dunkirk, and the neighbouring villages. What they see is their natural spaces being destroyed. At the moment, this is a particular concern because people tend to be taking refuge actually in a space which is a forest, and is actually part of it is a national park that's protected called Patuk. And obviously for the communities and the local residents, what they see is their natural spaces of beauty in their local area being destroyed constantly. And so although this community continues to be somewhat understanding of the situation that they have to live alongside, it is completely understandable that their patience is deteriorating and their frustrations are growing by having to deal with these informal camps destroying their local environment. And so this is where we developed the Precious Plastic Herzeele project, because we wanted to react to this. We want this project to reduce the environmental impact of informal camps in order to improve the living conditions for those sleeping rough outside, but also to reduce the tensions that are currently felt between transitioning and permanent communities. So, what are our actions to do this? We are developing a plastic recycling workshop space in the village of Herzeele, which is 20 minutes from Dunkirk. As a team, we have come up with a strategy with 3 main steps that will enable us to achieve our objectives. And so I'm going to go into those a little bit more detail. The first step is waste collection. We are working with an organisation called Roots to complete regular waste collections in informal camps. This includes setting up bins in various locations where people can throw away their waste without having to trek to the skip. Currently, we have set up 40 bins across various sites and empty these on a daily basis. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, this work continues by Tom. Once the confinement regulations are relaxed further in France, we'll be able to have more volunteers working with Tom, and this will allow us to complete larger waste collection operations, as well as making sure spaces are properly cleared after evictions. This is improving the improving the living conditions for those who have to sleep rough in these spaces, as well as reducing the visual impact of the informal camps for the local residents. And in the long term, hopefully it will reduce the environmental impact. The second step is all about using the plastic we collect. During these clearance operations, we will be separating out plastic, such as plastic bags, bottles, food trays, toothbrushes, and razors, into their different types so that they can be recycled and used. With the support of the precious plastic community, we'll be developing ways to separate, clean, and process the plastic so that it's easily usable. Through experimentation, learning, and making, with the support of our local community, including local artists and makers, we can develop different methods for using the plastic and different products that we can make. To support this work, we are building precious plastic machines that are able to shred, melt, and remold plastic using similar techniques found in industry, such as injection molding and extrusion. Finally, the third step is having a community workshop space and working with those around us. We want outreach to be a key part of our work. It will take place on 3 different levels. In the workshop space, we will be open and accessible to all. We will be a making space which focuses on using the recycled plastic as the main material for projects and creations. In this space, people can find and have access to the materials that we have collected, cleaned, and processed, allowing them to create, build, and experiment as they wish, whilst being environmentally friendly. With this space, we hope to bring together all ages, communities, and backgrounds who can bond through sharing the objective of helping the environment and the vulnerable communities that we live alongside. We are also working with local organisations in Herzeele, close to the workshop, to help them improve their waste management processes and increase the amount they recycle. They are directly able to give their plastic waste to the workshop, and in return we provide making activities which use the recycled materials and help highlight the environmental impact of plastic. An organisation we are closely working with at the moment is Maison Sésame. They are an emergency shelter for displaced people, providing mid-term accommodation for various different cases. We have been working with them to set up how they can dispose of their plastic waste so that it can be used in our workshop for the initial stages of testing and experimentation. Once the COVID-19 restrictions have been further reduced, Maison Sésame will be able to host again, and we will be working with them to develop a greater plastic recycling setup that all their residents can follow and be a part of, as well as providing weekly activities which use the plastic materials in different ways. Outside of Herzeele, we will be trying to work with organisations in Calais and Grand Centre who distribute aid and food on the ground. We will help them implement ways to improve how they can manage the waste that their actions create. This can include supporting them to have an appropriate space during distributions where people can throw away their food trays or return empty bottles or containers, or inform them of products that could be used instead, which are more easily recyclable. An organisation we are working with at the moment is Roots, who distribute battery packs made from recycled batteries. They are made from recycled 18650 batteries commonly found in laptops or vapes. However, they currently buy the casing for these battery pack cases from China. However, they currently buy the casing for these battery packs from China. And so at the moment, we are trying to design a new case that they can use, which will be produced from the plastic we collect from informal camps and made using precious plastic machines in our workshop space. We are super excited about this particular part of the project as we see it as the beginning of creating environmentally considerate aid which is recyclable. Okay, so that's quite a lot of information, but that's pretty much detail about different elements of the project. If you do have any questions, please just pop them in the comment box. But for now, I'm going to go on to the next section, which is talking a bit more in depth about precious plastic. So I spoke about precious plastic briefly in the second step of our plan of action. As we are currently building precious plastic machines for our makerspace, and in particular plan on using the precious plastic injection molder to produce the battery pack casings for roots. But what is precious plastic? Precious plastic is basically a project that was started by a guy called Dave Hackins, who is based in the Netherlands. His idea is that he wanted to make recycling more achievable on a local and smaller level, and for people to be able to make items that can present plastic as being a precious material and have more value. For this, he developed 4 different machines: a shredder, a compressor, an injection machine, and an extruding machine, which can all be built following instructions and technical drawings, blueprints that are all provided online, open source, for free. Precious Plastic version 3 gives you all the tools to create a precious plastic workshop space, and this is actually what initially inspired us to develop a precious plastic makerspace. I want to share with you the video as it can explain it a lot better than I can. Cool. So as he said, it is this super cool project that they've put together, and it's amazing that they have been able to provide everything for anyone completely free online. And so, as he said, it is definitely worth going on their website and finding out more. They have actually now developed version 4, which is called Precious Plastic Universe, and it's the same idea but on an even larger scale. So this is great because it means that the workshop spaces like ours have the potential to grow and collaborate with others in the future. So as makers, I think it's definitely worth checking them out, as everything they have produced, the map, the videos, the tutorials, the kit, it's a really high standard and completely free. So yeah, I won't say much more, as I think it's definitely worth exploring by yourself, as that helps for you to come inspired rather than me just telling you about it. Cool. So the next part of the session I wanted to go over, and the last, is just to briefly say why these kind of projects are important and why these kind of spaces, these maker spaces, are so important for us and our community. So as we probably are all aware, our world is quite obviously molded mostly by the most powerful and richest people and companies. They have engineers working hard, developing new technologies, materials, machines, products that will allow them and their companies to grow and stay on top of the game. And in this competitive world, it can be harder and harder for engineers to see other routes that they can take. And so I think that's why it's so important to keep a conversation going about how engineering and making can be used in more of a social context. We need to keep talking about how it should be and can be inclusive, and how our work can directly impact those around us. We want this project to be an example of how engineering isn't just about generating money and prestige, or particularly about high level and expensive technologies, but actually the fundamental parts of engineering are all about problem solving and creating solutions to the issues that we have, and to address some of society's fundamental challenges. These kind of projects are likely to be done by smaller organizations, where they're able to be directly working with and interacting with groups and individuals who have these problems. And so perhaps the best place for these kind of projects to be based around is a makerspace, a community makerspace, where everyone can come and interact and learn. These spaces can be where projects can take place, which allow technologies to be developed, but also for technologies that also already exist to be adapted and modified to make sure that they are benefiting specific communities who need them. Not only this, but it will also allow engineering and making to remain and become more accessible to anyone, regardless of their gender, their race, or their economic background. Because at the moment we do have a bit of a problem with most of the engineers in high-flying companies being white middle-class males. And so there is a need for projects to try and inspire and create the next generation's workforce, and hopefully a workforce that is more diverse and open. So we need projects and we need spaces that can inspire young people and get them on board by helping them to tackle the challenges that they are passionate about and the challenges that they feel are relevant to them. We have seen an incredible movement of young people over the past year taking to the streets to protest for climate justice. We can open spaces and create projects that allow them to act upon this passion and many others which can help them spark new interests in the world of engineering and making, and see how they can use these skills, these principles, and technology to help them solve society's challenges. So yeah, that's pretty much. And in summary, just to say, having spaces like maker spaces that are open and accessible to all, and have social development and solving social challenges at the heart of their core values and core actions, will mean that we can provide space where solutions can be generated that solve challenges that are relevant to the communities and the spaces that we're living in. And we can also inspire people, particularly the next generation, to think more mindfully when they are developing solutions, and particularly solutions that involve new technologies. We want to make sure that the engineers of the future are ones that are thinking about their impact on the world and their impact on their society. So again, like everything that I've talked about today, everything in itself is a big topic, and you could do a presentation on each one. But I think I will stop it there for now, because hopefully it has been enough to make you think about new ideas or have new thoughts about makerspaces and plastic and maybe the situation in northern France. So yeah, I hope it has been interesting, and thank you for listening. And please, I'd love to hear your feedback, and please get in contact if you would like to know any more information about any of the topics that I've touched on today. So finally, before I go, I do want to mention that Precious Plastic Herzeele always looks to grow its support network and welcomes volunteers from all over. Well, obviously not at the moment, thanks to COVID-19, but hopefully once that passes, we can we can go back to a bit of normality. But if you are interested in supporting us in any way, if you would like to come and volunteer, if you just want to find out more, please follow us on Facebook. We'll make sure to make all of our announcements over there, or you can contact us over email. And finally, I wanted to add that our work is funded by donations, and so if you want to support any of the work that I have been talking about today, here is a link where you can directly donate to us. So yeah, also to add to that, not just donations of money, but also if you have any donations of material that could help us with the renovations of our workshop space, that could be great. Just drop us an email and let us know. We're always interested in any possible donations or help. So great, thank you very much. I'm going to end there, and I'm going to open to any questions or thoughts. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope it's been of interest.